Simpson, and I'm 28. I design buildings for a living, commercial projects scattered across Seattle, the kind of work where precision isn't optional, and mistakes don't just look sloppy, they collapse. I've always gravitated toward clean lines, solid plans, and structures that do exactly what they're supposed to do. That mindset spilled into my personal life without me even noticing. Routine felt safe, progress felt earned. There was comfort in knowing what came next, and confidence in knowing I'd earned it. My days used to follow a rhythm I trusted. I woke up at 6:20 every morning, went to the gym for an hour, then headed into the office, where I stayed until 5 or 6, depending on deadlines. Evenings were either dinner with my buddy Eric or staying home building custom PC setups, a side hobby that somehow grew into a steady flow of clients who liked that I didn't cut corners. Weekends were for hiking, gaming, catching up on sleep. Quiet, predictable, mine. And there was Max, my golden retriever. I'd adopted him from a shelter 3 years ago. He never asked me to be more than I was. He just showed up every day and expected me to do the same. 4 years ago, I met Nate at a mutual friend's birthday party. He worked in marketing for a boutique firm downtown. Confident, polished, magnetic, the kind of man who filled space without effort. Perfect smile, easy laugh, the sort of presence that made people angle their bodies toward him without realizing it. I remember thinking he was out of my league. Then he laughed at one of my engineering jokes, the kind that usually landed flat, and something clicked. We talked for hours. I went home that night thinking maybe this was what it felt like when someone actually saw you. The first year was effortless. Dinners after work, weekends wandering the city, spontaneous trips to Portland or Vancouver, just because we could. Nate asked about my projects, listened when I explained why a beam mattered or how load distribution worked. He made my quiet world feel interesting, like it had texture instead of silence. I didn't notice when the questions stopped. It happened so gradually it blended into the background. Nate started calling my routines predictable, like it was a flaw I should apologize for. He'd watch me meal prep and joke that I lived like a spreadsheet. When I suggested a casual tie place, he'd counter with something trendier, pricier, somewhere worth dressing up for. By the 3rd year, there was a tension humming beneath everything, like we were always one wrong sentence away from an argument. Nate got irritated when I worked late, rolled his eyes when Eric and I planned football nights, compared me to his friends' boyfriends, men who were always traveling, always buying impressive things. How Trevor took his girlfriend to Bali without blinking. How Nathan bought his girl a watch that cost more than my car. Guys at my office don't settle, he'd say casually. And the worst part was that I started to believe him. I started wondering if maybe I was the problem. So I tried. I really did. I bought the brands Nate liked, even when a single shirt cost what I used to spend on groceries for a week. I said yes to restaurants I didn't enjoy. I cut back time with Eric because Nate said I was choosing friends over our relationship. I stepped into Nate's world, louder, shinier, curated, and tried to keep pace. But the standards kept shifting. 3 weeks ago, the breaking point showed up disguised as an ordinary Tuesday. I was buried in a major proposal, a mixed-use development that could change how my firm saw me. Deadline Friday. The kind of project that didn't just fill hours, it shaped careers. Around 8 p.m., my phone rang. Nate. I answered while still typing. His voice was already sharp. "Are you still at the office?" "Yeah," I said, explaining the deadline, explaining the pressure. He cut me off. "We had plans tonight." I checked my calendar. Nothing. When I asked what he meant, he snapped that he'd mentioned dinner with the Harrisons, his college friends who talked about funding rounds and vacation homes like it was casual conversation. I reminded him I'd explained this project would need extra hours, that it mattered. "Everything always matters for your career," he shot back. And then he laughed, short and dismissive, and told me I was still just a regular engineer, not even senior level. The words hit harder than I expected. Casual, cutting. Maybe if you pushed yourself instead of being comfortable with mediocrity, you'd be further along. I swallowed and asked if he could reschedule. He refused, said I always chose work over him. Then he hung up. I stared at my screen, fingers frozen, that familiar knot tightening in my stomach. I went back to work anyway. 2 days later, with the proposal nearly finished, I decided to leave early, surprise Nate, fix things, prove again that I could make this work. I stopped at his favorite Italian place and picked up carbonara. His apartment in Capitol Hill looked perfect as always. When he opened the door, his hair was wet, a robe tied loosely. No smile, no warmth. He looked at the food like it was a problem. "I already ate," he said. When I asked why he was acting like this, he told me flatly that I was never going to change, that I was content with my little routine, my little life. His phone buzzed, and I saw the private smile flicker across his face before he turned away to take the call. When he told me he had plans that night and asked if it mattered who with, something finally settled in me. Not anger, just exhaustion. Before Nate ever said the word space, I already felt the shift. When he finally did, it sounded harmless, almost reasonable. He needed time to think, asked not to call for a bit long enough to unsettle me. I asked how long. He didn't know. A couple weeks. I should have argued. I should have questioned the timing. But I was tired. I agreed. That night, sitting on my couch with Max's head on my knee, I felt quiet instead of panicked. The first week without Nate was strange, then peaceful. The proposal was approved, praised. I was pulled into meetings I'd never been invited to before. My boss mentioned my name alongside the word promotion like it was casual. I didn't call Nate. Midweek, he texted congratulations. I replied politely. Nothing else came. Saturday, I went hiking with Eric and friends. When I checked my phone later, there were missed calls and texts accusing me of ignoring him. When I finally called back, he sounded rattled. I reminded him he asked for space. "That's not what I meant," Nate said quickly. "I just meant space to think, not emotional distance." I exhaled slowly. "I'm not sure how to give you one without the other." Silence. Then he shifted topics. "The Harrisons asked about you. What did you tell them?" "That you had to work. They understood." Did they? Or did they smile politely and silently agree with everything Nate said about me? "Oh, and Lena was there too," he added casually. My stomach tightened. "Lena, my ex," he clarified like it was obvious. "She's still friends with the group." Of course she was. She said her company would never expect someone to work that much without serious compensation, Nate continued. Made me think. Think what? That maybe your firm takes advantage of you? There it was again, the same critique repackaged as concern. "I just got a major project approved," I said. "That's how advancement works in engineering." "Maybe," he replied, "but other people don't wait around hoping." The knot returned, familiar tight. "I'm not doing this right now," I said. "Doing what? Having the same argument in a new outfit? You wanted space, so take it, but I'm not spending that time defending who I am." There was a pause then, cooler this time. "Wow, okay, if that's how you feel." "If you want honesty," I said quietly, "that is how I feel." He didn't respond. Week 2 was quieter. Nate didn't call, I didn't call, but his presence found other ways to creep in. Instagram photos from rooftop bars, candlelit tables, smiling faces. Always work people, and always just off to the side, never tagged but unmistakable. Lena. Eric noticed before I said anything. "You seeing these posts?" he asked one night, scrolling on his phone. "Yeah, you okay with that?" "What am I supposed to be okay or not okay with?" I asked. He asked for space. He's using it. Eric frowned. Space usually doesn't mean flirting with your ex in public. "I don't know what it means anymore," I admitted. Work, meanwhile, kept improving. My boss scheduled a meeting 3 weeks out to discuss my future. I built a ridiculous gaming PC for a client and made $2,000 on the side. I started going to the gym in the evenings instead of rushing in the mornings. Life without managing Nate's disappointment felt lighter. Then, week 3, Nate called. Tuesday morning. I was reviewing blueprints when his name lit up my screen. For the first time in 4 years, I hesitated before answering. "Hey," I said. "You sound busy," he noted immediately. "I am. What's up?" "I've been thinking," he said. A lot, and I think we need to talk in person. When? Tonight. I have plans. With who? Eric. A pause. Tomorrow? Working late. We're presenting the proposal to the client this week. You're always working late, he snapped. You're the one who said I should advocate for myself, I replied. This is how I'm doing that. Another pause. You sound different, Nate said, finally. Different how? Cold, like you don't care. I almost laughed. I care, I'm just not panicking. That's not fair. You asked for space, I gave it. I didn't realize it came with required check-ins. Why are you being like this? Like what? Dismissive? I'm being honest. Silence stretched between us. I'll call you after the presentation, I said. This week matters. Don't bother, Nate snapped suddenly. What? You heard me. Clearly you have your priorities. Yes, I said calmly. This week, my priority is not blowing the biggest presentation of my career. You know what? His voice sharpened. You're lucky I even pick up your calls at this point. The words landed like ice water. Lucky. Something inside me went very still, and for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I felt clear. For a few seconds after Nate said it, the world went quiet. You're lucky I even pick up your calls. No shouting, no slammed doors, just that sentence. Casual, sharp, and final. I stared at the blueprint on my screen, lines blurring as something inside me settled into place. Not anger, not sadness. Clarity. Lucky, I repeated softly. Yes, Nate said, exhaling like he was exhausted. From where I'm standing, you've been a pretty disappointing girlfriend lately. Most people wouldn't even bother. There it was, the unfiltered version, the one I'd been bending myself around for a year. Something in my chest loosened. You're right, I said. There was a pause on the line. What? You're absolutely right, I continued, voice steady. You shouldn't have to pick up calls from someone who disappoints you. That must be exhausting. That's not what I meant, he said quickly. You're twisting my words. No, I replied. I think you finally said them clearly. What are you saying, Aaliyah? I'm saying I'm done. Silence, then quieter. You're breaking up with me over the phone? You've been breaking up with me in pieces for the past year, I said. I'm just making it official. That's ridiculous. This is because of one comment. This is because of 1,000 comments, I said. This was just the last one. You're overreacting, Nate snapped. I was upset. You're always upset, I said, and somehow it's always my fault. You can't just walk away from 4 years. I didn't, I said. I shrank myself for 4 years. That's not the same thing. He exhaled sharply. So that's it? You're just done? Yes, just like that. The simplicity shocked him more than yelling ever could. I called to work things out, he said, and you're ending it. You called to tell me I should feel grateful you still talk to me, I replied. That's not working things out. That's control. Silence again. I have to go, I added. My meeting's starting. Wait. I hung up. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. A knock sounded on my cubicle wall. My coworker Amy leaned in, concern written all over her face. You okay? She asked. You look pale. Yeah, I said, surprised to realize it was true. I just ended my relationship. Oh, she hesitated. Do you need a minute? No, I need to nail this meeting. And I did. The presentation flowed like it had been waiting for me to stop holding my breath. I spoke clearly, confidently. When questions came, I answered without second-guessing myself. Afterward, my boss pulled me aside. Whatever's different about you, he said, keep it up. You're on fire. If only he knew. The rest of the week passed without a word from Nate. No angry texts, no apologies, just silence. Friday afternoon, the client signed off on the project. My boss called me into his office. "We'd like to offer you the senior engineer position," he said, smiling. "20% raise. You've earned this." I thanked him, my throat tight. That night, I celebrated with Eric and a few coworkers. When I told them about the breakup, no one looked surprised. "About time," Eric muttered into his beer. Amy nodded. "She used to correct you at parties, like you'd be telling a story and he'd interrupt over tiny details. It was uncomfortable." "Huh," I said quietly. The weekend came and went peacefully. I took Max to the beach, cleaned my apartment, slept deeply for the first time in months. Monday morning, I walked into work lighter than I'd felt in a long time. New business cards were being printed. A corner office, small but mine, waited upstairs. Around 10, Amy stopped by. "Hey," she said, "there's someone in the lobby asking for you." "Client?" "No," she replied carefully. "Says it's personal." My stomach dropped. "Did they give a name?" "Nate," she said, looks emotional. I closed my eyes for a brief second. "Okay," I said, "I'll be right down." And as I stood, I realized something else had changed. I wasn't afraid anymore. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have. Each floor chimed softly, like it was giving me time to reconsider, to brace myself, to remember the version of me that would have rehearsed apologies, explanations, anything to keep the peace. That version didn't exist anymore. When the doors opened, I saw Nate immediately. He was sitting on one of the modern chairs in the lobby, hunched forward, elbows on his knees, jeans, a sweatshirt, none of the polished, curated look he usually wore. His eyes were red, swollen, like he hadn't slept. When he saw me, he stood too fast. "Awaya," he said, voice cracking. "Can we talk?" "I'm at work," I replied evenly. "I know, I'm sorry, He swallowed. "You wouldn't answer my calls." "People who break up don't usually talk," I said. "That's kind of the point." He flinched. "We didn't really break up, you were just angry." "I wasn't angry," I said. "I was done." He shook his head like I was being unreasonable. "You don't mean that." "I do." The receptionist pretended very hard not to listen. I gestured toward the doors. Outside. Seattle greeted us with overcast skies and a fine mist, the kind of gray that felt appropriate. "I came to apologize," Nate said quickly, as if afraid I'd walk away. "The things I said on the phone, I didn't mean them. I was stressed." "You've been stressed for a year," I replied. "I know," he said, eyes shining, "and I messed up. My friends helped me see it." "Your friends?" I asked. "The same ones who watched you treat me like I was never enough? That's not fair." "It's accurate." He wiped at his eyes. "I just wanted you to reach your potential." "My potential according to who?" I asked, calmly. "You?" He hesitated. "I just got promoted," I continued. "Senior engineer, 20% raise." His face fell. You did?" "Yes. That's amazing," he said, forcing a smile. "I'm really happy for you." "Are you?" I asked. "Because the only time you talked about this project was to criticize me for working on it." He opened his mouth, then closed it. At that moment, Amy stepped out of the building, phone in hand. I caught her eye. "Amy?" I called. "Can you come here a second?" She approached cautiously. "Hey, Nate, this is my coworker Amy," I said. Then I turned to her. "Amy, can you tell me, who is this?" Amy hesitated for half a heartbeat. Then she understood. "I'm not sure," she said slowly. "I don't know him." I looked at Nate. "Exactly." Color drained from his face. "What are you doing?" he whispered. "Answering honestly," I said. "I don't know who you are anymore. The man I dated wouldn't have treated me the way you did." "That's cruel," he said, voice shaking. "You know what's cruel?" I replied. "Spending 4 years with someone who made me feel like I was constantly auditioning for their approval." Amy excused herself quietly, giving me a small nod as she left. Nate was crying now, openly. "I came here to fix this," he said, "to tell you I love you. These weeks without you have been terrible." "I'm sorry you're hurting," I said, and I meant it, "but there is no us to fix." "That's not true," he insisted. "We had good times." "When?" I asked gently. "When was the last time you looked at me like you chose me instead of settling?" He didn't answer. "I can't be the person you want me to be," I said, "and I'm done trying." He stepped closer. "Please give me another chance." "No." Just like that. Just like that. I turned back toward the doors. "You'll regret this," he called after me. "You'll realize what you gave up." I paused, then looked back. "The only thing I regret," I said, "is doing this sooner." I went inside and didn't look back. That afternoon, Nate tried calling twice. I didn't answer. By the time I finished my last meeting, there was a long email waiting in my inbox. Subject line, "Please just read this." I didn't. Not because I was trying to be cruel, but because I finally understood something I'd been too close to see before. Closure for Nate wasn't about peace, it was about access. That night, I blocked his number. The next morning, I blocked him on Instagram, LinkedIn, everything. When the doorman at my building texted to ask if I wanted to approve a visitor, Nate, again, I told him no and asked that he not be let up in the future. The silence afterwards was clean, sharp, permanent. Through mutual friends, I heard the story Nate started telling, that I blindsided him, that I changed, that I became cold after my promotion, that he never saw it coming, which was impressive considering he'd spent the last year telling me explicitly everything that was wrong with me. Apparently, the sympathy didn't land the way he expected. People remembered things. How he used to correct me mid-story at parties, how he rolled his eyes when I talked about my work, how he compared me to other women, other careers, other lives, always louder, richer, shinier. Even Lena, the ex who'd hovered conveniently in the background, stopped responding to his messages once she realized he was actually available. Turns out the chase had been more appealing than the reality. Work, meanwhile, kept moving forward. My promotion became official, new title, new responsibilities, a small corner office with a window that let in gray Seattle light I'd grown to love. I bought Max a ridiculous new bed he ignored in favor of my couch. I hosted game nights again, took weekends without checking my phone. 1 week later, Nate sent an email from a new address. It was long, apologetic, full of insight he didn't have when it mattered. He wrote about unrealistic expectations, about insecurity, about wanting closure. I didn't respond, not because I hated him, but because I didn't owe him another explanation of why I deserve to be treated well. Sometimes the ending is the closure. I learned that love shouldn't feel like a performance review, that ambition doesn't have to be loud to be real, and that anyone who makes you feel lucky just to be tolerated has already disqualified themselves from your life. I didn't lose someone who loved me. I let go of someone who needed me small.